as we start here, before we go, I just want everybody to know that the meeting's being recorded. We're gonna take a vote on recording. If it isn't, the vote's negative, we're gonna just delete the recording. If it's positive, we're gonna keep the recording.
You already voted.
No, we
No,
didn't.
we didn't.
We have a quorum. Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Public input? None, no public input. Approval of minutes. The minutes that were sent out were a prior draft that had been changed.
Yeah.
So we are going to hold off on approving the minutes until the next meeting. Then we come down to the election of the chair and the vice chair for the fiscal year 2026 budget. Can't believe he's saying 2026. And so I'll take nominations from the table for chair.
I nominate the current chair.
Second.
So sorry. It's a dubious distinction.
Any other nominations from the floor? All right, any discussion? Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to elect Rob as chair for the 2025-26 budget season.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so it's 5-0. And then we're gonna go for, can I get nominations for the vice chair for the 2026 budget?
I nominate Chris as vice chair.
I second.
Okay, so can I get a motion to elect Chris?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, 5-0. So we have a new, a selectman have put on a new, we have a new representative from the selectmen, which will be Dave this year. Right? Okay. And then we need to get a representative from the budget committee onto CIP. I wish Gary was here. So I intend to go to a lot of the CIP meetings. I find them to be really helpful,
Yeah.
really good. You know, so I'm gonna go. I would like to have somebody else
Help out, yeah.
help out with it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I'll make as many of them as I can
okay.
because I also agree it's valuable to be
Right.
there. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what does that look like for you when you say as many as you can? Because I know you also hold down a full-time job.
Yeah. I probably around 70% of them, I would imagine,
Okay.
because they meet as regularly as we do. Correct?
They do
More or less.
a little earlier on, so they're
Okay.
done by the end of December.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Okay. Yeah, probably the majority of them for sure.
Okay.
And I would gather, I mean, he's not here, but I think Gary would probably, if he knew it wasn't his sole responsibility to be at all the CIP, I think, because he did enjoy that too. I think he might.
Okay.
Yeah.
Recommend.
And he's got good history there too.
Yeah.
He knows the town pretty deep, and the members.
Okay.
We'll split it into a three piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe what we'll do is we won't select
A
a representative
Representative.
right now. We can
Just try to consistently have representation.
Yeah, put
rather
on a
than-
rotation.
That's it, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think that maybe, you know, as we get closer to actually our schedule, you can look at your schedules and then, you
Yeah.
know, you can just slide people into the slot.
Yep.
You know, once you know the CIP meetings, you guys, you know, okay, Brenda will do, I'll do Gary, you know, maybe that
Yeah.
would work. I'm just
Right.
throwing that out there. Then there would be consistency, you would know, okay, there's conflict.
Right. Yeah, and the only reason that I'm hesitant is because I'm on some other boards, and I'm also sometimes out of state for business. That would be the only reason I would
Right.
skip.
Right. I think it would be good if we had a representative that wasn't me. So I would ask, I think we should get somebody, maybe we can get Gary, I'd like to have done it tonight's meeting, but he's not here, unless you wanna do it, knowing that I'm gonna be your backup.
Oh, me being the primary?
Yeah,
I could do that.
you can do that?
Mm-hmm. I can commit to that.
All right. So I would make a motion to nominate Brendan as being the CIP representative from the Budget Committee for fiscal year 2026.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. So historically, we've had, every year as we've gone through the budget, we've made improvements to the process. And I think for this year, the process itself is pretty good. I think we got it down. I think we go through the budgets pretty well. I think we work well with CIP. I think that's all been pretty much enhanced would be my view. I know everybody else has a different sense on that.
I like how it's come together. I think that there's really good structure. The bones are good. It's just a matter of fine tuning it. But I mean, it's really in the past 3 years, it's really come together well. And I think that it's making every department and everybody kind of be more on board and everybody on the same page, not kind of over here and there. And I think personally, it's better for us, and I think the departments too.
Right, I agree. I think one of the areas where we can improve, I felt that there were some barriers that were put up from time to time as related to getting certain information. And so what I want to do this year, and it will be for the August meeting, and I'm happy to do it early, and I'm also happy to work on it. But there's certain things that I think we need to get made sure they're clean and resolved. So one is the road highway department budget. And that sheet, make sure that that's prepared as we go along, that we're looking at it in a format that we had last year, that it comes out, pretty early on in the process so we can look at it. It's a big budget item. It's probably one of the most difficult items to budget, just given the variability in the expense. But being able to take out as many of the variables as possible and then just focus on what those things that are variable and what the risks are in that is, I think, an important aspect. I think that would be one of those. I think another one is the personnel costs, something we want to get out early on and get that resolved. And I think we're at a point now where the Budget Committee gets the sheet. There's no reason for them not to have it.
I often don't get the increases from Health Trust till significantly through our process. So earlier than last year, but it's based on a third party, so.
Well, I think what we can do is have the spreadsheet, and then that variable, which is the increase, and I know, for instance, the New Hampshire retirement system rate for that year is published at a certain point in time, that those can just get changed, but they should flow through the spreadsheet. So there shouldn't really be, we can still get the spreadsheet done and get it all verified, and then just
plug in the number.
Plug in the rates at the
Yeah.
end if they change.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And I'm assuming you just go with this year's number for the time being until.
Right, until those become
Yeah.
apparent.
And the departments have to, it can be a dynamic spreadsheet. I personally don't like too many copies around, but we need to know if there's new hires recommended, because we have to add all of them.
Right. So, but I mean, this in December we've done. By December, we have
Oh, yeah.
all the information
Right.
that we need from the department.
Yeah.
There's not many people being hired in the departments. Does anybody else have any other idea of process improvements from last year? I'd also invite the selectmen if they want to provide any input from their review from last year.
If you can, I think the work you did was fantastic. It was thorough. It was transparent. It was very good. However, I think you put a heavy burden on these two. And if there's any way that you can reduce that burden, hours of time, researching and whatnot, I think that would be beneficial for everybody. Otherwise, we're gonna have to think about changing hours, adding hours, and we don't wanna do that.
Well, I think it would be good to take a deeper dive into that, to understand, because, you know, I don't know what we can do less on and what's unrealistic, because obviously at the end of the day, we have to be comfortable with the numbers that are going out that we approve. So as I sit here right now, I really can't think of any area where we spent excessive time on.
If you can make it more efficient, that would
Yeah.
be great.
Yeah.
That's all we're asking.
Yeah, and so part of me wanting to get, like on the highway department, to get ahead of that, is because it's much easier to do it as you go, as the bills roll in, than it is to do it, you know, looking back a year. That's a huge time suck under pressure. I'm trying to think about other areas that were problematic. Yeah, but obviously we want to be cognizant of people's time and effort for sure.
Thank you.
So I appreciate that.
And getting the information earlier rather than later, once again, will lighten the load just by design, because then we'll have the numbers as they go. It's not like they have to prepare an entire budget season stuff in one fell swoop, especially with the fire, with the highway and also the personnel. I mean, some of it is pretty standard.
Is there any way to look back at, say, just last year with regard to the requests that you made, in the spirit of getting ahead of it? Is there any way to do that?
Yeah, I think the two major requests were the road works, was the road department, right, highway department.
And the personnel,
Personnel,
because
those
the
were-
personnel had to keep getting updated, and because there were errors throughout every presentation, and that had to be corrected. So if we get it early enough, we're gonna not have that issue, because we'll catch it before we're sitting here trying to do our part. And so if we can get ahead of it, I think that's right. I'm wrong. We just want to get ahead of it. So, I'm sure we can go back through and look at the requests and the time that was made, and, and get those early. And even if they're just drafts to start with, and just, get that. Because I think part of the problem was that there were some errors, but there were also, we were sitting here and the information wasn't either complete or correct. And that's why we had to keep going back.
Right.
And that added time. And
Right.
that, if we can to make it more streamlined, if we can eliminate that, that's gonna help everybody
Right.
and eliminate time.
Inevitably, there'll be some new pieces,
Yeah.
right?
And wrinkles.
But if we can,
I think one of the things that really did take a lot of time was, if we get the sheet, and this for me in particular, because I do spend time before meetings going through the stuff and figuring it out. If I get the sheet in the meeting, I'm much more inclined to just throw out a bunch of things that I have complete when I see things that don't make sense to me. And if I have it ahead of time, I'll go through the whole thing and then come with a much more complete and full answer, and that will obviously save a lot of time as we go through on that as well.
yeah, it felt like we would get information and then it would just delay the process in terms of pushing it out a week.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I'm tracking that exactly.
So it felt like the request wasn't, like the request came in, I vaguely just remember that when we made requests, we'd have to spend the week looking at whatever the data was, and then we'd get to the following week, and then there'd be some sort of hiccup, and then we'd have to push it out another week.
Right.
That's how I remember or at least I feel like the cycle went.
The personnel budget, there was 5 different personnel budgets presented with 5 different numbers. So every time it came in and it arrived at the meeting, it
didn't get presented ahead of time so that he could, because he would be vetting out the numbers. and then it just got presented at the meeting, instead of it maybe got to him ahead of time, he could vet it out, maybe have the conversation, get the corrections before the meeting, so it didn't kick it out another full week. Does that make sense? That's what was eating up a lot of the time, and I think it is if we get the information.
Try to
early
get
enough.
ahead of it.
Yeah, get ahead of it.
I thought, for instance, on the two budgets, like the fire department's work is unbelievable and excellent. I think Jamie did a really good job for us first time through that, and those are a standard that seems to make a lot of sense. It's kind of, those budgets went pretty quickly. We did ask for some money to come out, and they came out on some of it, and they went back and checked some things, and that was always going to happen. But I mean, the next weeks we approved those budgets, so I think that's the gold standard.
There was a ton of transparency and metrics in
Yeah.
those. It was excellent.
It was
I agree.
Yeah,
I don't know if every department can pull that together, but he did a great job.
right. Anything else?
Can I talk about the administrative process for minutes and agendas? On minutes, the RSA says the draft has to be done within 5 days of the meeting and available to the public. So in my experience, the minutes have been sent to the entire board, and then they give feedback. And right now that doesn't happen with this board. And also the agendas, are you okay with us pretty much making the agenda and publishing it? Because I'm uncomfortable having things with draft on them before the meeting. Because we want to have a packet available the Thursday before the meeting. If you're meeting Tuesday, people know end of business Thursday, they can get a packet. That gives them 4 days to look at it.
Yeah. So Audrey, I can guarantee that I was never the holdup. So I actually do take offense to what you just said. Okay, because I definitely was never the holdup on getting the agenda out, and I used to review the minutes very quickly after they came on, and I'd send them back. And quite frankly, the minutes were often not prepared for a long time, definitely not within 5 days.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I
we just
concur.
got if we're going to go back to this record, I'm just
I'm
telling you,
not,
so I'm a little sensitive to this issue.
no, the only
Yeah.
thing I said personal about you is that they only go to you. Can we send them to the whole committee
So-
for their feedback?
They used to go to the whole committee before. But
Yeah.
they were in such a business shape that nobody could really work with them. So I then took the time to sit down, which is normally an hour or two, and I used to correct them and then send them back, and then they can go to the whole committee. I'm fine. But I think before they go out, it would be a really good suggestion if you read them to make sure that they reflected what you thought should be, and they were written in a way that made sense. Yep.
We touched on this at the end of the season last year, and you touched at the beginning of recording the meetings. I think recording the meetings is an absolute, it's a must.
Right.
Number one, it'll ensure accuracy of the minutes, so there really should be no excuse for having faulty minutes. And you probably, I don't want to tell you how to do your job, you do your job very well, but you might want to lay out expectations of what you want in the minutes. Do you want them minimalist? Do you want them highly detailed, somewhere in between? Because they can do whatever you want.
Right, somewhere in between. So we should probably just have a brief discussion on recording these meetings. I'm fine with recording the meetings, I have no issue with it. So we can do that. And then the minutes should be somewhere in between. So they should be reflective of the discussion that happened, but they should not provide, every single play-by-play detail. Sort of where I come out on this.
So I think that at this time, let's take a vote as a committee, whether or not we're comfortable with having the minutes recorded on a regular basis.
The meeting's recorded. So can I get a motion from the floor to approve recording the minutes? Meetings.
Motion to have our meetings recorded.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0.
Very good, thank you.
All right. So Audrey, I think what we'll do is I think we should try, I'm happy for you to review the minutes before they come out, and then to get them out within, within, for enough time so that people can review them for the next meeting. So that depends on where we are in the schedule. So if we're in a weekly meeting schedule, if we're in a 2-weekly meeting schedule.
And having draft on things is not, there's nothing wrong with having draft on items. I mean, having a draft agenda, I think, is fine. There's no reason to not, it's just draft, it's fine. We can change the agenda, it's fine, we have draft. And there's draft on minutes, that's fine. Yeah, then they get final approval, you remove the draft. And then you can put it back on the website.
So that kind of segues, Kevin, to your left is calendars, if you wanted to pass those out.
They've already been passed out.
I got it.
Oh,
You got
okay.
one. Everyone has one except for me.
All right,
Thank you.
so,
I'll take one too.
no.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
So, in November and December, the meetings piggyback to the selectmen's meetings, the green and purple next to each other. And that means we have 2 sets of minutes, 2 meetings to prepare for the week before. And frankly, that's onerous and exhausting. So, the Wednesday after having 2 nightly meetings is, I don't wanna say I'm useless, but it's a lot, takes a lot out of me. So I don't know if we can adjust the schedule some.
So-
And,
For our meetings?
Yeah, I'm happy to work on this, but I'm looking at September. I
oh
don't
no,
think-
September and October are
Oh,
great.
fine, right?
Yeah,
Okay, so then,
November and December.
November's so what, do the selectmen jump off a meeting schedule?
no, they're every other week.
Oh, so we go from the 28th to the 4th, is that the issue? Yeah, so that's
Right.
why we have a 1-week break there.
You have 2 meetings in a row there.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's gonna happen, but having 4 of them, and it's the most intense when we're trying to wrap things up and the longer. And to piggyback that, I'm going to create a draft of the meeting schedule and which department's gonna present when. So the department managers will have more, preparation time, know when they're coming, because I take accountability that last year, the department heads weren't given enough time, or they were
Okay.
cut short, so, and I will not take vacation in November.
Should we just address the calendar issue for now? So why don't
Sure.
we move our November 4th meeting to November 11th? It's Veterans Day, is that a
It's
problem?
better and not for me,
Does anybody else?
but I'm just public at
No.
this point.
Yeah, I don't mind. I'm good with it.
You okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a pseudo holiday, unfortunately, at this point in time. I'm gonna mark up
I'm not
this
a
one.
veteran and I won't be offended.
November 18th. So November 18th but November 25th is not gonna work.
No, that's the week of
Thanksgiving.
I mean, having 1 or 2 back to back,
Yeah,
It's
1 or
fine.
2, but
why don't we just do the 11th? And then we'll just do the 18th that month, and then we can switch a couple in December.
Yeah, so we can have the same issue in December, right?
Yeah, 23rd is
Yeah.
Christmas week.
Yeah, so December,
So we could still switch it to the 9th.
yeah.
Yeah.
Will you switch in the
the
second?
2nd to the 9th.
And yeah, that's a 50% change right
I
there.
really appreciate that.
And then we don't go into January, right?
January and February were good. The only one that matched was the one that we can't avoid, the public hearing, so that's fine.
Okay. So on the calendar that you have, I'd also like to make, I'd like to add, just let me finish the whole thought here. I'd like to
Okay.
add January 13th in there. And I'd like to asterisk September 16th October 14th, and January 13th. And at the bottom, put a footnote that says, if needed.
January 13th is it?
Repeat those days again?
September 16th, October 14th, and January 13th. Will all have asterisks on them saying if needed. I think sometimes we get ahead of ourselves in the beginning of the year when things aren't really prepared and ready to go. So,
So the 4th will now be the 11th in November, and the 2nd of December will now be the 9th.
okay, and then obviously the joint meeting with CIP, it has to be agreed to with CIP. But I think as we get into doing the, as the warrant articles come along, and that it may be worthwhile having another meeting with, I thought it was worthwhile having
Yeah.
Jill at some of the
Yep.
meetings.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
As time went along, so. And then I think the only other thing that I have to would like to talk about is the, we did 2 years ago, we visited the transfer station and we visited, the
Fire station.
fire station in public, and highway
Town
department,
garage,
yeah.
yep.
Yep.
And I'm thinking that we should do the fire department again, it's one of our largest budgets.
Mm.
And I think we should visit the police department, even though it's right over here, but I think it's good for us to go and
Yeah.
meet with them and see how they operate and what they do and all that. So I don't know if anybody has any other view on that?
No, I think that'd be good.
So I'm gonna try and schedule those, for sometime in sort of September, unless somebody else has a different date they think may work. Do you have any view on that, Bob? I know you came to them, so,
Yeah, no, I don't care. I'm flexible,
okay,
mostly.
all right. Anybody else have any date?
I have a thought.
Chip, I can't see you because you're hiding behind people up here.
What do you think of the idea of scheduling it and then reviewing their budget the same night? So the chiefs, we can get it out there ahead of time, a visit and the budget,
You know, it's more user-friendly if we
if it's
go,
separate.
if they're separate, because, you know,
Okay.
the budget sometimes can get contentious
All right.
and, you know, emotional, so, shouldn't, but it does, so I think it's better to go there and really, I found it really valuable when I went there and learned, you know, about what they do and why they do certain things, it makes understanding the budget easier, so. All right, so we'll go ahead and get those scheduled. All right, so, I'm just curious where we came out on the police, you know, on the new police department building, what's going on, funding, how it's all working. I'd asked you, Audrey, to try and figure out why it was non-lapsing.
So I did send a second follow-up email to DRA today. So I've been out for almost 2 weeks and she doesn't get back quickly. So if I don't hear from her by the end of the week, I'll call. But she's the one who included the language to the addition change to the petition warrant article. So she had obviously looked at it recently. But I asked her specifically about non-lapsing.
Which is why I had a hard time in the town meeting for why we were attaching it to a warrant article that basically.
Yeah, it was CRA's direction. That's Department of Revenue,
Mhm.
yeah. If I use acronyms,
That's helpful to
Okay,
every once in a
yeah.
while, if you introduce a new one to unpack it for me, I appreciate that. Yeah.
There are guiding light when it, yeah. There are guide when it comes to all things legal around budget issues,
Okay.
generally speaking. And they do audits for us, right? Do they do audits for us?
Not that I'm aware, no.
Okay.
So they're just the compliance arm.
This is
Yeah.
compliance.
Okay.
So,
So I'm still waiting for that to find out why it's considered lapsing or non-lapsing.
but I mean, on the face, so right now, when we're looking at it, on the face of that warrant article as in the town book, as I read it, it would not say it was non-lapsing, right?
Which one?
The
are you talking
2021.
about?
The 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So so where are we then? Because obviously if we, until we resolve that issue, we don't know whether we have the money, right? Because if we resolved it at town meeting, then we could have changed the warrant article to go against the reserves, right? Because that's where the money would otherwise be sitting. But we didn't do that. So where are we? Are we going ahead? Well, are we contracting at all, or are we waiting?
Oh,
till
we're
we get-
moving forward. We're absolutely moving forward.
So does that change if you don't have the 700,000?
I'm going under the assumption that we do.
I mean, there's two schools of thought. One is that we added to that initial 2021 warrant additional money in subsequent years, so that's gonna push the timeline a bit there. But also DRA has reviewed these things every year. And as well as our auditors have done this, we've submitted MS, 737s and whatnot. So those numbers have been in our audited statements for 5 years or 4 years, I guess it is. And DRA has signed off on all of those, so I'm not sure if we need to ask, I mean, obviously you think we need to ask the question, but I'm pretty confident that if they had lapsed, or that article had lapsed, DRA would have told us that we had to have to move that when they received our audit or our MS 737. They would have said, this money is now in your undesignated fund balance. It's no longer a warrant.
So I think the issue for me, Chip, is just, it's really, really simple. I read the warrant article that set that money aside,
Mhm.
and there's nowhere in it does it say it's non-lapsing. So if that's the case, then I don't know how you get to a leap of faith that that money was set aside and isn't in the unassigned fund balance. I don't really care
So
what
let's,
the accountants say.
Does it say it's lapsing?
It says it's, yeah, just for that year. I have it here.
Doesn't say it's lapsing or
So-
non-lapsing.
so let's, for the sake of argument, just for the sake of argument, let's say it's lapsed. Where's the money?
It's still there.
Where is it? It's in the reserve, right?
Yeah,
Okay, so what would we have to do to get that money?
Of a town meeting.
Have a town meeting.
have a special town meeting.
Yep. Which would be unfortunate, but the town has already stated it wants the police station done. They voted on that. If, worst case scenario, we have to have a town meeting to get that money out of the reserve, we do it. So,
It's an avenue.
I don't disagree. I think we voted to have it done. I just don't think we can go down, when you have a warrant article that, you know, normally if it's gonna be non-lapsing, it says this is non-lapsing,
sure,
right? And when
Sure.
it doesn't say on its face.
right. So,
then
I mean,
we should probably have dealt with this at the
right,
meeting.
so knowing what we know right now, right? We have two options. Either DRA has reviewed it over the few years and hasn't made an issue of it, and it's a non-issue. Or, Plan B, which is not optimal, is we have a town meeting to get the money out of the reserve. Either way, we're gonna get it done.
But you have to have a town meeting though,
Yes,
which I think is, from what I understand, it's really hard to have a town meeting.
perhaps,
You know?
but we'll get it done.
Well, I just think we need to go back. I think for everybody's benefit here, we need to go back and figure out why this is not lapsing. And it may be that what I'm reading right now wasn't the final from the town meeting, it may be a whole different reasons, maybe it was done in 2022. Somebody said to me, I don't know what happened.
Right.
You know, so, but we need to have an answer, because on the face of it, what I'm reading right now, it doesn't seem to read that way. So, I mean, I think it's just, I wouldn't, if I was the selectman, I wouldn't want to go down a road knowing that, I mean, would not be my number one choice. So that's number one. And number two, where do we stand on the grant? Has there been any update on that?
I can't speak to it.
They're considering not using it right now, so.
Yeah, we've changed the plans. I don't think, it doesn't appear as though there are gonna be any government grants coming out of Washington anyway. So we've gone ahead and changed the design, not the footprint, but the construction design. And a couple of elements in the foundation, for instance, like a little less steel. In order to come within the budget number that we're looking for. We had the three culvert articles that were 90% federal funded, and we've been told that that money's not coming. So,
And that's, well, it's still, I thought we were still up in the air. We were told that it wasn't coming, and then,
he's gonna keep checking.
yeah.
We haven't got the letter yet.
We don't have the official, and we can't move forward right now.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, I'm confused. So the grant money for the police station is not going to come through? Or you're checking on it, but it doesn't look good?
We are not planning on it.
I see, okay.
We are going forward with the construction based on that not being a thing.
And can you just remind me, what was the figure for that?
314? 340?
341, I think.
341.
Yeah,
I got the
yeah.
numbers, but yeah, 341.
About that.
Okay. Because you'll have to remind me, but that was a kind of a bone of contention on at the town meeting. It seemed like a lot of people were voting a particular way because federal funding was coming through. I could be totally wrong, but that was my take on it.
Wrong, because the federal funding doesn't kick in until you spent every nickel of your own money.
Right.
So we will have had to spend $2.2 million.
But the town people were told that they were going to get federal funding. And then there was a whole conversation about whether or not that grant was going to lapse. And we would not get the federal funding if we did not go forward. And I think that was a decision point for a lot of people.
I'm not following you. So is it the lapsing that is that question here?
I think what you're saying is that people voted based on that.
Yeah, so let me,
grant.
I'm going to digress. As an individual voter, I looked at a federal grant coming in at 341, thinking that it might lapse, and that was part of my decision to move forward now. Okay, but I am one person, so this is new information.
But what you're saying, Brendan, is your articulation of what was going on in the room at the time was very correct, because Jamie got up and answered that question and said that if we don't do it by March 2026, then that warrant article lapses.
Right.
So that was definitely a piece of information that people had. Now whether that original piece of information was correct or not is up for debate.
Yeah, I'm just posing that if we were to go into a meeting and that information were to have been made available, I don't know what the end result would have been. That's all. Water under the bridge, I guess.
And so just as we sit here and look at this today in this way, the selectmen are looking at it, putting aside that I hope we can resolve this warrant article issue from 2021, but then we're gonna have 2.2 million, is that what the number is? Something like that, about that, right?
Yeah.
And then we think we can build a police station that's of the size that was said
For that,
for that, fully completed
that's our goal.
Yep.
and done. Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. All right.
I mean, it goes without saying that that 341 $100,000 grant came with.
Strings. You had the
Sure.
handicap
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So which strings get pulled now? I mean, obviously, they all do, but, so what was the major
So now we
obstacle?
build it like you would build any commercial building.
Okay, so a lot less restrictions and less expensive?
Yep.
Probably.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, when I came on onto the select board, whether I said it publicly or not, I was not a huge fan of the grant because I felt it was somewhat onerous.
Yeah.
So my feelings aren't hurt that we're trying to do this for the money that
Okay.
we have.
That's important to know.
Same, I've said that from the beginning too. I'd be just as happy to do this without the grant, because I thought that the grant gave us, handcuffed us, so to speak,
Yeah.
and gave us certain things that we had to do that made the project more expensive.
So, not the least of which, putting aside the actual stuff you have to put in the building, the paperwork alone
You're right.
was onerous.
And there's probably extra accounting too with that.
Perhaps and so think about it from a contractor's perspective. Would you prefer to do it with the grant or without?
Oh,
Most contractors are going to be.
yeah, without a
We
doubt.
found that that's turned away a lot of prospective bidders as
Yep.
well, just by having that in place.
Yep.
Interesting.
Because we put it out to bid 3 times,
Or,
4 times, and nobody wanted to touch it.
well, we got bids, but they were.
Mostly
the last
nobody
bidding
didn't
was
touch it.
in the
Yeah.
$2.5 million range, so.
Yeah. Any ballpark as to, so we're not gonna get the 341, the savings on that would be just ballpark?
What do you mean?
Because we're not going to, with strings attached and the construction of it is different. Do you know what the savings
Don't
might
really
be?
know because
I think at the
So it's
end of the
not
day-
quantifiable.
I think at the end of the day, we're still gonna satisfy the requirements.
Yeah, at the end of the day, if we go through the process the way we've been going through the process and getting the bids that we're getting, we'll end up
Mhm.
paying for it. Even if we had the grant, we wouldn't be able to utilize it because it was for the construction of the building and we had to spend all of our money and we currently have enough money to build the building. So I think it becomes moot at that point. I mean, I don't think there's any reason to go through the paperwork complications or keeping the architect on board for a rate of pay that doesn't need to be there. We need a clerk, we need some other function for inspections.
Davis Bacon wages, yada yada.
Well, everybody pays Davis Bacon.
But still, we won't be held to that standard.
So, does that sort of kind of give you more information? I don't know, makes you.
At this point, yeah.
It's been a very complicated process, and at the end of the day, we expect to have a very nice police station.
It sounds like it, and I know there's a lot of work that went into it, and I appreciate that, so.
Yeah. So I think the only thing that would be good, once you resolve the question on the warrant article, we can just get a brief email out to everybody, because I don't want to wait until August. Good. Okay, thank you. All right. Board of Selectmen update?
I mean,
Well, it's the start of the season.
it's the start of the season. It's all about the police station from our perspective for the most part. Is there any particular solar is still? Huh?
The permitting process is completed with the solar with the exception of the state DES permit, which has been filed. And their expectation is they'll have the answer for us sometime the end of May, the 1st of June, so construction will start. The design is in the office, so if anybody wants to look at it, it's all there. The 2 questions that I've posed to them is that we're limited to the amount of production we can make of solar to the building's usage that the town has. We didn't include in that calculation the new police station. So we want to make sure that there's no extraneous cost or extra cost for adding to the field in 2 years, let's say, that we don't have to replace all the gizmos that correct things. So that question's outstanding. I don't think we've gotten an answer to that.
No.
And if we run the economics without the 100,000 coming back, the 30% coming back,
Meaning,
well, I thought that was going away too.
no, that's a tax credit, so we have to file a tax return. And my understanding from revision is that process is ongoing and people are still utilizing it and getting their tax refunds. And that's, I mean, if the IRS disappears in the next 6 months, then maybe we'll have to worry about
The
that.
school credit is still there.
It's still there?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so that's good.
Did you all get a copy of the most recent expense report?
No.
No.
Okay, so we'll make sure you get that, because one thing that's concerning is that the highway department winter budget is close to 50% right now, so, or their whole budget is.
Yeah,
No, that-
the winter's gone.
winter's gone, but
Thank you.
their budget is around 50% spent, so,
Is that typically where we are at this time of the year?
no, everybody else's budget's somewhere in the 30.
Okay.
Well, but they have a
But-
different seasonality to
Yeah.
the business, right?
Yeah,
Yes and no. I
I
mean,
mean,
it's,
it's
the budget's broken up, spring, summer, winter, fall.
Right, and it's already budgeted for a higher amount in the winter.
Yeah,
Right.
in winter spent, so that leaves us,
yeah, so,
with, October, November, December.
yeah, the current rate of travel, although we won't get snowstorms between now and Labor Day, but he'll be out of money in Labor Day if we did. So that's, I think once you look at the expense reports, you'll understand.
Well, I think what we should do is really dial in on, this is one of the areas we're gonna dial in on this budget a lot
Yeah.
more.
Hmm.
And where the money's going and where it's being spent and why. And I know it's getting snowstorms, and I understand, I think it's $11,000 a snowstorm. Pretty much what it comes down to when we have these 3 inches or we have 6 inches, it's still $11,000 a snowstorm. That's kind of the issue, but it would be really good to understand what we spend on salt, because that doesn't change as much, and also the sand doesn't change as much, but when we have guys going out and clearing the roads, that's a big hit every time. So I think we start to budget to these, try and really understand what that looks like, so we can make maybe a better estimate of the budget. We do have $75,000 sitting in the contingency reserve though, for this reason.
And others.
Right,
Hmm.
right,
It's not just for the highway department.
right.
And I think last week you said it had been called out 44 times for snow and ice.
Yeah, it's been that kind of winter, where
Yeah.
we just got these 3 or 4 inch snowstorms, so.
And we reviewed his expense, his charges for labor and equipment 2 years ago. So we can revisit that, make sure he's in the market. They haven't changed in 2 years, so.
Right,
I think if anything, they should probably go up.
okay, well, I think we should spend time at that.
Yeah.
Anything else on it? So I think, Brandon, another thing was going on is that, for the 2 bridges, where we're putting up 15% and was a federal grant for 85%, my understanding is those grants
Yeah.
are no longer,
They're on hold.
they're on hold right now, right?
According to the information we have.
So,
3 of them, Sodom Road, Curtis Road, and
Sodom's
Union
not
Road?
been awarded yet. The other 3 are in process. Yeah.
Oh, so no, we haven't contracted for anyone
to do anything,
to do anything.
right? And the need to do that, is there, a washout potential on those old bridges or?
The conduits are too small, right? They're too small
Yeah.
to accommodate, so flooding, so if there's a flooding event, now you've got potential flooding across the road where larger conduit obviously allows
Okay,
drainage.
all right. Anything else? That's it?
That's it.
Anything else? Any other?
Are there certain departments you'd rather see earlier in the year? I started to say when we're looking at the calendar, I'd like to put out a schedule ahead of time to all the departments saying this is when you're expected for these meetings.
Yeah. I'd like to see the simpler ones earlier in the year, and the reason for that is because they're more understandable, and so the more history we have in any given year for the bigger ones and the larger ones, the better. So I'd rather not look at the fire department in September, and we're still got a quarter to go in the year. I'd rather be looking at that in November and December. So I'm happy to sit down with you and go
Okay.
through them.
And you want to
Figure out
keep
the
the
capital.
4 large departments, and when I say large, I mean fire, police, transfer station, highway, different weeks.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
all right, I'll do a draft and send it to you.
Okay, great. Anything else? Well, look forward to a good 2026 budget season. All working together in harmony.
Look forward. Generous meeting.
I'm looking forward. All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Excellent.